Welcome students of Form 3 and to be exact 3B. In this video we are proceeding with chapter 2 and we have arrived at the last paragraph, paragraph 6. This paragraph. Yeah, and take it in front of you if you haven't done already. So did you know what we'll be talking about? This paragraph will be more technical, more political, will be more about governance. So you really need to pay attention. But I also will use a lot of examples from Curacao, especially when we get to the second and third video. So I hope that helps you in understanding this paragraph better. And this paragraph is about why do we have institutions? In other words, what are the functions of institutions? And why, in our complex society with hundreds of thousands of people, on Curacao 155,000, but most nowadays societies have millions or even billions of people in their country. So why do we need institutions nowadays? Why can't we do without them? Functions of institutions, that's what we're going to talk about. Then we have a few learning outcomes, and this is about evaluating, so looking at the pros and the cons and giving like a final judgment about it. Evaluate the functions of societies, institutions. So look at the pros, look at the cons, look at it from the front, look at it from the back, look at it from different ways, and give a final judgment about it, about institutions in society. So evaluate the functions of institutions in society. Those are the is the learning outcome of this paragraph actually. So keep that in the back of your mind so you actually know what we're doing in this first video of a three-part series of videos about the functions of institutions in our society. Well, first, back to why do we have institutions and what does a society do? So when we look at the society, it must provide basic food and shelter for its members, and if they don't have any, even clothing. So the society takes care of its members if they cannot take care of themselves. So at a very basic level, yeah, like the primary needs of a society is to provide clothing, food, and shelter if people in that society don't have this. But if a society develops, and like for instance that of Curacao, in our society now more than 150,000 people live. This census was of 2021, if I'm correct, 2022, and back then 151,066 people lived in our island. And we are a developing society. Yeah, nos sociedad desarrollo, that means, as it significa, it won't get less complicated, it will get more complicated because our society is slowly developing, desarrolla, ita crece, it's growing. So as a society develops, this started in our society in 1917 with the arrival of the Shell to our island, and the Shell brought all kinds of people from the rest of the Caribbean to our island, people from Madeira, people from Suriname, people from people from Lebanon. They brought to our island, and that's why the population started growing until what it is now, more than 150,000. So as a society develops, for instance, because it becomes more industrialized, increasingly complex systems of provision and administration are necessary. As the population grows to more than 150,000, because it industrializes, because of, for instance, oil refinery that you can see in the corner over there, increasingly complex systems of provision and administration are necessary. In other words, as a society develops, es sociedad desarrolla, it becomes more complex, it becomes more complicated of provision and administration. So just keeping out, noting the numbers, who's getting what, just administrating it, just providing it, makes the society more complex, actually, with organizations and institutions managing the whole process. Here you see one. This is the Ministerie van Planning en Dienstverlening en Bestuur, and this ministry takes care of all of the organization of our island that has become increasingly complex. But also close by, it's vergunningenloket. But also if you want to build something, or if you want to start a company, or if you want to do something else on the island, you need a permit, burgemeester permission paiseki. So here you see the increasingly complex systems on our island. And here also you see Kranchi. And Kranchi gives you permit, or it gives you a birth certificate, proof that your child is born, proof that you have cedula on the island. So these are like symbols of our increasingly complex society, and all kinds of permits, burgemeester and all kinds of proofs, preba, pa nascimento, bo muchenan. Yes, so these are signals of an increasingly complex society on our island. And here you have CMC, where you go when you're ill, and you undergo all kinds of complicated medicine or treatment or surgery. So these are all signals that our society has increasingly become complex. In a modern developing society, such as the Caribbean, the provision of even the basic requirements, even basic stuff, can involve a complicated series of interactions. So even the basic requirements, like handing out a birth certificate or getting medicine or receiving a permit, can be a complex series of interactions between public workers and public servants who have to give a stamp, who have to give permission. It goes to different ministries. In other words, it can be very complex. Un sociedad moderno en desarrollo. A modern society in development. Yeah? In a modern developing society, a society modern in development. The provision of medicine, so handing out medicine, handing out permits, handing out a birth certificate of your daughter or son can be very complex because we have a lot of people, 155,000 by now, that have created a very complex society, actually. Yes, and it sometimes, like you can see in the picture, can give a very complicated set of actions that the public servants have to do before they can hand out the birth certificate to you, or before they can hand out a permit to you, or they can give a cedula to you, or can give you the medicine you need. It goes through a complex sequence of actions before you get what you actually need. That's because Nostra Viva en una sociedad moderno en desarrollo. A complicated series of interaction is needed to hand out even the basic requirements in a modern developing society, like you can see here. Yes? Okay, I hope that makes sense. And this all started in 1917 because the Shell didn't have enough skilled workers, so it needed to get skilled workers from abroad, and then the population started to grow from 30,000 to more than 100,000, and this created a sociedad moderna de desarrollo, but where even the simplest provision for the people can give a complicated set of actions needed by the public servants. In the case of food, for example, the simplest form of transaction is where a producer sells directly to a consumer. So he buys something in a supermarket. But in today's society, however, most people buy their food from a retailer, like you can see in the corner of the supermarket, like the Mangusa, or one of the Centrums, or other supermarkets. The retailer, like you can see in the corner, will have bought the food from a wholesaler, like you can see above, the EWT, the European West in these trade organizations who may have purchased from a food processing company. A food processing company is a place where the stuff gets bottled or stuff gets packaged. Yeah, stuff gets closed off so it can be sold into the supermarket, like you can see in the corner, fully automated. All of these stages of food processing, and they're brought to a wholesaler and then brought to a retailer, require other systems and organizations that check what's happening there, that put up the dates there, that manages the prices of it all so it won't become too expensive, such as transport companies. Like you can see above, it needs to be transported by boat and in containers. Financial institutions and even regulatory bodies. Yeah, in Curaçao we have the Voedsel- en Warenautoriteit, the Food and Product Authority that checks sometimes restaurants if their food isn't overdate and the way they manage food, if it doesn't create diseases for you. And if it isn't safe how they manage food in their restaurants, yeah, the restaurant or the small supermarket will be closed because the food they hand out isn't safe to be handed out and it can create diseases with the people that buy it. This we call regulatory bodies. But also be involved in establishing such things as food labeling when it is produced and until what date it can be sold, and food standards and negotiating trade agreements for imported and exported foods, and occasionally having to fix prices. Yeah, we have like the Voedselmond, yeah, and this also says, okay, this product can only be sold for this price maximum. The government tries to create a situation where the prices of the food doesn't go up too much. So normal people like you and me can still afford the food. We call this the Voedselmand, or here the Makutu Básico. So the food doesn't become too pricey, it doesn't become too expensive. So the whole managing of food and products creates a whole industry of wholesales, food processing, transport, very complex on an island, regulatory bodies, the Voedsel- en Warenautoriteit, who check the food and check if the food is managed properly and hygienically, so what we eat doesn't get us sick. Yeah, but also regulatory bodies that check if the food doesn't become too expensive for normal people like you and me to buy, and not only for the tourists to buy with their dollars or euros. Yeah, the government tries to keep prices low as they can, so normal people can also afford vegetables and fruits. And occasionally they try to fix prices, like you can see there. Yes, so this is what you see there. And the regulatory bodies are called in Papiamento, Instantia non Regulatorio. Not bad, right? Instantia non Regulatorio. They try to create food safety so that the food is treated and managed in a safe way. They check this. And if it doesn't, they get a big sticker on it, and a restaurant or the small supermarket is closed. And occasionally, they also try to fix prices so it won't get too expensive. This is next to the Sky VSBO, I believe, and this is the regulatory authority of Curaçao who checks the prices of the gas, the energy, the oil, the petroleum that goes into our cars, and sometimes does things to keep the prices low or even get their prices to lower as they are. So the normal people, the inhabitants of Curaçao, are still able to buy petroleum for their cars and still are able to buy electricity for their houses. Yes, so occasionally organizations like this, located, I believe, next to the Sky VSBO, they try to fix prices so they won't become sky high. The many needs of a society are usually allocated to one of the following categories: economic, educational, recreational, religious, or political. And here you can see a few examples. One example, religions often do things for poor people or people who are handicapped, or people who have it less than most people in the society. So most people benefit from the works of members of faith groups who are often volunteers helping other people. Learning outcomes. At the end of this topic, you will be able to evaluate the functions of institutions in society. Like for now, we talked about regulatory bodies, we talked about wholesales, we talked about retails. Yes, these are mostly economic and governmental functions in society that regulate prices and also regulate arrange food safety. So we talked about this already a little bit, and in the next videos we're going to talk about it more, the functions of institutions in society. Like religious ones, we talked about a little bit, but we talked more about economic institutions and political institutions already. If you have questions, please ask them below. If you want to ask me a question during class, it's also possible. Remember, this video was about paragraph 6 of chapter 2, and we talked about functions of institutions. For now, if you want to ring the bell, do that below, and I wish you a nice evening, afternoon, or morning, and for now, a very well-meant goodbye to you all.